It wasn't supposed to end like this. The courtroom had been set for ceremony, for huddles over legal papers, and the delicate division of property and contracts. A ritual, a procedure subdued. And yet, as the massive oak doors creaked open, it became something else altogether. A stage, waiting for the destruction of the Brown family's well-crafted persona. Every face turned. Every gaze followed her. Janelle Brown had arrived. Not the old sister-wife folk recalled. Not the woman who had once existed in family shadows. She was different. Her blazer was navy crisp, measured. Her heels clicked like a metronome, defining the beat of inevitability. Hair pulled tightly back. Eyes level, face serene, but charged. She moved as one who had everything to gain and nothing to lose. But it wasn't poisonous. It wasn't calm. Number. It was the ring. Gold. Spotless. Blazing in the fluorescent light. Nearly taunting the room into contesting it. Her left hand spoke the truth. Everyone dared not speak out. Now. Chris gasped. Mary blinked twice. Even the court clerk pressed up her glasses in shock. Cody Brown, head whiplashing toward her, went gray. Not white gray. The kind of gray that comes when your soul remembers suddenly a wrong too long forgotten. His mouth worked, shaping words unspoken. Janelle didn't look at him. Not even once. She advanced with careful ease, easing into the chair next to her lawyer. Fingers held steady. Folder dropped on the desk with gentle finality. "I am Janelle Sullivan now," she spoke, voice steady, crisp. "I have remarried." The courtroom held its breath, too still. Even the judge paused, sensing the subtle shift in gravity. The room had entered a different dimension. Janelle's attorney nodded, deliberate. "We are here to petition for a full financial dissolution from Mr. Cody Brown. All assets, all trusts, all ties severed." Across the aisle, Robyn's hand shot to her mouth. Mascara already smudged, lawyer whispering, "Don't react, not yet," but it was too late. The tide had turned. This was not just legal procedure anymore. It was a declaration, reclamation. The storm was not coming. It had come, and the first ripple wasn't even hers alone. Behind her, someone else had come. A man from Cody's past, Ben Sullivan. Unfazed, unruffled, no melodrama. A wedding band flashed on his left hand, a perfect mirror to Janelle's. Cody caught his gaze, pulled back as though he'd spotted a specter. Ben Sullivan. Cody growled softly, close to a curse. The room fell 5 degrees in that moment. This was more than a husband. This was history come back to life. A name buried so deep it was a while now since anyone had thought about it. A power rebooting itself before everyone's eyes. The courtroom closed in around them. All eyes were on Janelle, on the storm brewing inside her. Cody's normal calm was gone, replaced by the white, strained face that spoke more volumes than words ever could. Robyn's fingers curled and uncurled anxiously against the cuff of her sleeve, attempting to conceal her panic, but the smudged mascara gave away the secret. The judge cleared his throat. Court is now in session on the petition for dissolution of all remaining financial trusts and joint property between Mr. Cody Brown and Mrs. Janelle Sullivan. The words fell like stones. The name Sullivan rang off the oak walls and through the chamber. Cody attempted to interrupt. "This is ridiculous. She can't just..." Janelle's eyes rose, calm, cutting, a dagger in flesh. "No, Cody," she said softly but firmly. "This is clarity." A hush descended, the sort of hush that doesn't herald silence, but presses it down like gravity. Ben leaned forward fractionally, voice low, measured, and clear. "This didn't start in court, Cody. It started when you lost your ear." Reporters were even interrupted, pencils and cameras suspended mid-habit. The court was no longer a room of paperwork, it had become an arena. A 10-year-old resentment, hidden beneath obligatory smiles and guarded words, had been turned into a weapon. Flashback, it was 2012, a mellow coffee shop in Flagstaff. Janelle alone in a corner booth, fingers clasped around a lukewarm cup. Her eyes were weary, not from lost sleep, but from years of maintaining. Across from her, a man stirred his coffee in silence. He didn't interrupt, he just listened. Ben Sullivan. A stranger then, though the conversation would linger for years in the quiet corners of memory. I shouldn't unload on strangers, Janelle had whispered. You're not unloading, he replied. You're cracking the dam. Their conversation had been careful, tactical, human, but not romantic. A spark of recognition, of shared understanding, and yet it sowed seeds that neither of them was able to see would blossom into this courtroom moment. In the present, Janelle's hand lay peacefully across the folder of evidence. Ben's standing behind her was intentional, unobtrusive, a soft declaration of authority. Kody leaned back, jaw clenched, a man comprehending that the quiet figure standing behind his ex-partner could bring down the empire he had believed invincible. Your Honor. Janelle's lawyer opened, measured, unyielding. We present exhibit A 2016 financial transaction signed by Mr. Cody Brown transferring trust funds to a nameless holding company. Kody shifted restlessly, his voice shaking. I don't remember signing that. That was temporary, no. Janelle cut in, icy detached. You were hiding things. The energy in the room changed. Reporters scribbled wildly. Click, click, click. It was no longer a divorce. It was about being exposed, taking back power, and unveiling truths long hidden. The projector roared to life, its cold glow illuminating the courtroom. Janelle's lawyer rose, measured, clutching a lone sheet as if it held the world's weight. Your Honor, he told her, composed but authoritative. We are providing proof of financial impropriety following funds that were diverted out of Mrs. Sullivan's knowledge or approval. Kody fidgeted in his chair, clenched jaw and slightly shaking hands resting on the table. His habitual bravado crumbled beneath the weight of the charge. On the other side of the aisle, Robyn's hand shot up to cover her mouth once more. Her attorney nodded forward, whispering, "Stay cool. Don't respond." But it was too late. Her expression gave away panic, her poise already beginning to crack. The courtroom was silent as the first slide came up. Bank records, account transfers, corporate reports, all color-coded and marked. The proof was inescapable. Each line, each digit, each signature spoke a tale Kody had long wished would stay hidden. Janelle didn't blink. She didn't look at him. She just sat, elegant, left hand lightly on the folder, wedding band reflecting the fluorescent lighting. Behind her, quiet but palpable, was Ben Sullivan. Reminder that power had changed hands. Christine leaned forward, eyes wide with shock. He owns part of Coyote Pass now? She breathed to Mary. Yes, Mary answered softly, equally awed. Everything is changed. The judge, his brow furrowed, scanned the documents. Mr. Brown? You have those signatures there. Can you tell me about these transfers? Kody moved forward, peering at the screen, his tone low and guarded. I think so, but those were stopgap measures. We were restructuring things. No, Kody. Janelle's voice sliced through the room, icy and crisp. You were hiding things, assets were being diverted without my approval. We have the papers to document it. A gasp went up from the gallery, cameras popped. Reporters wrote madly. The courtroom had evolved beyond its function as a mere ground for legal rituals. It had turned into a drama of disclosure. Then came the second sting. Janelle's lawyer handed the judge a thick envelope. Your Honor, this package contains notarized financial disclosure statements, LLC formation statements, and account transfers, all leading back to the shared marital trust. Kody's face went white, a specter of his normal arrogance. Even Robyn, normally calm, stuttered, eyes wide, lips open, they had underestimated her. They had thought that compliance and silence could hold her. But she had come back, with not anger, but documentation, proof, and the soft power of a woman who had lost everything there was to lose. Ben Sullivan's gaze clashed with Kody's in the middle of the room. No showmanship, no drama. Only motionless, stubborn affirmation. Kody had been caught off guard by a 10-year oversight. He hadn't realized could be turned against him, and now it could. The air in the courtroom grew heavy, electric, almost unbearable. Robyn's poise, long the guise of control, was starting to crack under the relentless exactness of Janelle's delivery. Her fingers, once firm, shook slightly as she clasped them together on her lap. Mascara had begun to streak, a quiet betrayal of the turmoil bubbling beneath the surface. Your Honor, said Janelle's lawyer, voice steady, measured, we now present Exhibit B, records of diverted network stipends, redirected through a private LLC controlled, without Mrs. Sullivan's consent. The gallery gasped. Cameras zoomed in, reporters scribbled, even the judge leaned forward. Interest peaked, eyes scanning the fat packet of evidence now placed before him. Kody's jaw clenched. His fists gripped the table edges. That sure, strong man who had ruled this family for so long was coming apart at the seams under the light of public scrutiny. The careful strands of his domination, financial power, strategic silences, calculated manipulation of appearances, were being painstakingly pulled apart before all those who had ever trusted the Brown image. Robyn's eyes shifted uncertainly between her lawyer and the papers. I didn't know," she faltered. Her voice was quiet, shaking, a whisper of the strong woman she usually was. "You were aware," Janelle's lawyer replied steady. "Your awareness is on record in these emails and bank statements. This was not an accident. It was intentional." The room constricted around them, the air charged with disbelief and tension. Christine leaned in over Mary, whispering, "She has been building this case for years, and we never saw it coming." Mary nodded intently, her eyes staring at Janelle. "She is not just reclaiming her rights," she spoke softly. "She is laying everything bare." Janelle's fingers lay lightly on top of her folder. Her stance was tranquil, serene, but there was an unmistakable sharpness to her presence, like a blade fitting into place. Each movement, each look, every carefully chosen word was a declaration of power, of command, of finality. Ben Sullivan stood behind her, silent but powerful. His mere presence appeared to ground the room in a new reality. Janelle was no longer acting independently. She had come back with backup, with plan, and with the authority of evidence. Kody fidgeted in his chair, looking around frantically, attempting to compose himself. But the dawning realization encased him like a glaze. He had overestimated neither Janelle nor the repercussions of decisions he had assumed could be buried. Robyn's pretense had thoroughly shattered. She was no longer an active participant with agency over perception. She had evolved into an observer, a witness to the breakdown she had not predicted. Janelle's lawyer's measured, soothing voice pierced the urgency. "Your Honor, we now enter into evidence Exhibit C. Audio recordings and letters verifying intentional misappropriation of marital and network property, carried out without Mrs. Sullivan's approval." Silence descended upon the courtroom. The war had commenced, and it was not a war of words, but of irrefutable evidence. The Brown family's meticulously crafted image was breaking down. One document, one tape, one whispered exercise of power at a time. It wasn't just drama in the courtroom that had reduced the Brown family to its knees. Years before, Janelle had sown the seeds of this day, quietly, unobtrusively, while the family was ensnared in its own act. Flashback, a tiny coffee house on the edge of Flagstaff, 2012. Janelle sat in a corner booth, notebook spread out, fingers running over the rim of a warm mug. Her focus wasn't on the moment, wasn't on the mundane frustrations of family duty. It was on survival, on self. Sufficiency, on quietly building the tools she would need when the time came to reclaim herself. Across from her, a man stirred his coffee, silent, observant. Ben Sullivan. At the time, a stranger, or so it seemed. Their conversation was careful, deliberate, but human, compassionate. No romantic gestures, no theatrics, only understanding and recognition. "You're cracking the dam," he had said softly, leaning slightly forward. Not unloading the contrast was key. Janelle had nodded, a flash of comprehension in her eyes. They had swapped contact details, emails, the odd bit of advice along the way. Tactical, understated, human, nothing sensational, nothing newsworthy. But each encounter added the structure to the moment now playing out in court. Now in the present, Janelle's serene presence disguised the tempest she had engineered. Her left hand lay lightly on the folder, wedding ring glinting in the light, a testament not just to her new life but to the strategic game she had played for years. Ben Sullivan stayed behind her, an anchor of quiet strength. Kody's eyes lingered, uncomfortable, as he grappled with the presence of the man he had sought to erase from his past. Not an actor, not a specter of vengeance, but a steady, inexorable power, evidence that the past had a tendency to reclaim itself. The judge adjusted in his seat, his eyes scanning the evidence. Every document, every bank statement, every lovingly marked up email piled layers onto the narrative. It wasn't about a divorce. It wasn't even about a remarriage. It was about reclamation, restoration, and revelation of decades of deception. Robyn, still sitting on the opposite side of the aisle, was struggling to keep her composure. The streaks of mascara along her cheeks reflected the fluorescent lighting. Her hands shook as she clasped them together, reminding herself she was in command. But the grip was slipping from her hands like sand. "Your Honor," Janelle's lawyer went on, serene, measured, "we will demonstrate that misappropriation was neither inadvertent nor incidental. We have a complete timeline, starting in 2016, of ongoing deliberate diversion of marital and network resources." Kody leaned forward a bit in his seat. His years-long armor was beginning to crack. He could feel the inevitability of revelation, the careful planning of a scheme he never thought would get past him. The courtroom remained mute, weighed down with anticipation. This was not just legal procedure. It was reckoning. There was an electric air in the courtroom. All eyes stayed on Janelle as she sat, her face set, her expression almost chiseled, demanding notice that required more than words. Kody shifted uncomfortably under her. Silent power, and Robyn's earlier veneer of control had completely broken. The disintegration had started in earnest. Janelle's lawyer leaned forward, his voice thoughtful, calculated. "Your Honor, we submit Exhibit D, in-house communications and financial affairs evidencing intentional coordination between Mr. Cody Brown and Mrs. Robyn Brown, bypassing the proper authority and concealing critical information from Mrs. Sullivan." The judge slid his glasses down his nose and looked down at the pile of evidence. "Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown, are you signing off on these records?" Cody's jaw tightened. I can't describe every detail," he growled, voice low, guarded. Robyn's lips parted, alarm flashing across her face. I didn't know." Janelle's eyes came up slowly, eyes steady, voice incisive, controlled. "You knew precisely what was going on. The documents don't lie, and neither do the emails, bank statements, or recorded communications." The gallery murmured, cameras clicked. Even the journalists, old and seasoned as they were surprised at the clarity and accuracy of the evidence. Christine leaned in towards Mary. "This is it," she whispered. "She is not only pointing fingers, she is displaying receipts." Mary nodded softly. Years of hidden manipulation exposed all at once. Then came the first audio recording, Exhibit E. The courtroom fell silent as the faint voice of Kody came through the speakers, discussing transfers and rerouting of funds. "If she wants her share, we'll bury it," Kody said. "Transfer it through the wellness brand. She'll never trace it." Robyn flinched, her mouth opening in a silent gasp. Kody attempted to jump in, but one look from the judge quieted him in an instant. "It will be entered into the official record," the judge stated. The mood in the room changed. This was no longer just a family argument. It was an accounting for control, a public display of skillfully concealed acts. And Janelle was choreographing each revelation. Ben Sullivan hung back quiet, his very presence proclaiming in no uncertain terms Janelle was not alone. Every step she took had been skillfully underpinned, long planned for years and executed to perfection. Robyn's fists clenched, white-knuckled in her lap. She had thought herself invincible, the fulcrum upon which control turned. And now she was relegated to spectator status, having to observe decades of assumed power collapse. Janelle's lawyer's voice intruded again, measured, tranquil. "Your Honor, we now introduce Exhibit F bank statements, transfers, and LLC records, tracking embezzled funds and assets directly into the control of accounts outside of the awareness of Mrs. Sullivan, establishing intentional concealment and coordination." The ensuing silence was oppressive, almost choking. Kody's shoulders sagged, and Robyn's complexion turned pale. The courtroom was no longer simply a forum of juridical procedures. It was now a forum of disclosure, exposure, and accounting. The courtroom still hung in a chilling silence, the burden of evidence bearing down on all the actors. The atmosphere was heavy with expectation, every slight movement amplified under the scrutiny of the gallery as a whole. Cameras snapped, reporters jotted down notes, but nobody said anything. The quiet itself was judgment. Janelle's lawyer leaned in, calm and calculated. Your Honor, we now present Exhibit G, private letters between the members of the Brown Inner Circle, outlining premeditated redirecting of funds and deliberate hiding from Mrs. Sullivan. The judge thumbed through the packets, his brow nodding. Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown, can you explain these communications? Kody's voice broke tight with urgency. I don't remember everything. These were just proposals, not actions. Not actions. Janelle's voice cut through the courtroom like a surgical blade, icy and sharp. The emails, the transfers, the recorded instructions, all prove actions. Your planning was intentional, methodical, and it was designed to shut me out and guard your interests. Robyn's fingers trembled as she gripped the lip of the table, mascara running down her face. Her previous attempts at keeping her composure had completely unraveled. The woman who used to be the epicenter of control now sat bare, helpless to affect the proceedings. Christine leaned in toward Mary, speaking quietly. She is unraveling it all quietly, step by step. Not with drama, but with receipts. Evidence, proof, the whole family in full view. Mary nodded, her gaze locked on Janelle. It is not revenge, it is reclaiming, and she won't quit. The judge's gaze was keen, reading over the documents on his desk. Exhibit G contains comprehensive records of fund transactions and communications that involve both parties. This court will note that these actions seem concerted and deliberate. Janelle's lawyer locked eyes with the judge, unblinking. Your Honor, this coordination was not one-off. It is symptomatic of a long-standing pattern of conduct, thoroughly chronicled over a few years. We have other proof, finances, tapes, emails, and testimony, to determine the breadth and motive. Ben Sullivan's presence looming in the background was felt, not a peep, not a movement. Just the reminder that Janelle had forces, a safety net, and strategic strength. Kody's gaze darted toward him, disturbed, as if the man's measured control by itself made the accusations a given. Then the first witness was sworn in. A soft hum of surprise ran through the courtroom as a staff accountant rose, hands trembling slightly but voice steady. I handled financial reports from 2016 to 2021, she stated. I saw consistent instructions to divert funds from shared family holdings to accounts beyond the reach of Mrs. Sullivan. Kody's face clenched, his fingers drumming anxiously against the tabletop. Robyn's mouth opened, words stuck in her throat. Both were quiet now, their shields breaking down under questioning. The courtroom had changed. It was no longer merely a judicial hearing. It was discovery and overturning of assumed powers, and the gradual measured laying bare of concealed truths. The gallery was still tight, each gaze on the proceedings. The oppressive weight of anticipation had become almost suffocating, as though the walls themselves listened, drunk in the drama unfolding. Janelle's composed figure at the head of the courtroom only served to heighten the tension. Every little movement bore the burden of years of strategy and planning. Your Honor, Janelle's lawyer started, we present our next witness, Lila Green, past payroll coordinator at Brown Entertainment Holdings. Gasps resonated throughout the room. Lila was a person that few had seen in public, a behind-the-scenes player in the family's financial workings. Her placid appearance concealed the tempest she was to unleash. I maintained stipends, reimbursements, and expense accounts for all the cast members, Lila testified, hands firm on the witness stand. I answered to TLC Finance between 2014 and 2021. I noticed repeated directives to divert funds from joint family accounts into personal LLCs controlled without Mrs. Sullivan's permission. The courtroom buzzed, the testimony seeping in. Even veteran journalists fidgeted awkwardly in their seats, aware that they were seeing a staged disentanglement of power, layer by layer. Christine leaned forward over Mary. She is affirming it, Christine whispered. All of it, every coercive transaction. Mary's gaze remained fixed on Janelle. This isn't merely reclamation, she said quietly. It is the unveiling of a system designed to stifle her. Lila went on, rifling through folders with care. Starting in late 2018, I was directed to siphon family and network bonuses into a private LLC, Flagstaff Family Dynamics. The money was then transferred into properties under Mrs. Robyn Brown's name alone. Those transfers were intentional and recorded. Robyn's face had paled, her fingers latched on the edge of the table. Kody's posture hardened, shoulders hunched, jaw clenched. They had thought their machinations imperceptible. They had overestimated the slow build of evidence. Janelle's lawyer's tone broke the tension, calm and deliberate. Your Honor, Exhibit H, bank statements, ownership transfers, and emails supporting Miss Green's testimony. This is not speculation, it is traceable. Recorded action over a period of years. The judge leaned forward, reading the documents. His gaze darted between Cody and Robyn. This seems to show a conscious, concerted attempt to hide assets from Mrs. Sullivan. That is right, Lila nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Each directive, each transfer, was recorded. It was intentional. Ben Sullivan hung unobtrusively behind Janelle, a discreet reminder that her seat was protected, her backing unconquerable. Cody's gaze darted in his direction once more, a silent recognition of the tactical high ground Janelle now held. The energy in the courtroom had entirely changed. The Brown family, once impenetrable, now sat bared, their secrets pouring out into the daylight, bereft of defense or narrative momentum. The courtroom was thick with silence, almost unbearable, as the gravity of Lila Green's words settled over all of them. Each member of the room knew it. The Brown family's meticulously built reputation was shattering before their eyes, and there was no pause button. Janelle's lawyer moved forward, voice steady but sharp. Your Honor, we now enter into evidence Exhibit I, audio recordings and internal messages verifying instructions from Mr. Cody Brown and Mrs. Robyn Brown to redirect funds from joint family accounts into private ownership. These transfers were intentional, coordinated, and designed to block access to Mrs. Sullivan's rightful portion. The judge's forehead creased as he considered the records. Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown, do you recognize these accounts? Cody's hand jerked involuntarily, a nervous spasm he had never shown in public. I might have approved transfers, but it was procedural, he mumbled, voice barely above a whisper. Robyn's skin was pale, mascara smudged from previous distress. I didn't know it would, she started, interrupted. Didn't know. Janelle's voice cut through the room, quiet, icy, sharp. The emails, the memos, the bank statements. They all speak to awareness and conscious purpose. This isn't speculation. This is fact. The courtroom gasped in shock. Cameras flashed. Writers scribbled madly. Even veteran reporters used to soap operas were transfixed by the sheer accuracy and force of the exposures. Next came the first bombshell piece of evidence. Exhibit J, a series of financial reports detailing money moved into accounts under the banner of business expenses, but in the end, channeled into properties and assets held in Robyn's name alone. Cody, Janelle's lawyer, stated, voice firm, these are not business expenses. These are private gains kept secret from Mrs. Sullivan and other relatives. Can you tell me about this? Cody's gaze about the room searched for help, but there was none. Ben Sullivan's cool, confident stand behind Janelle was a reminder in silence that the past he believed hidden came back, armed to the teeth with evidence and friends. Robyn's hands trembled uncontrollably on the table. She had worked for years to keep up the illusion of control, the hub of the family's authority. Now she was naked, exposed, unable to prevent the disintegration of the story she had assisted in building. Christine and Mary traded a silent look, the truth descending. She is doing more than outing them, Christine breathed. She is taking it all back, quietly, methodically, relentlessly. The gavel of the judge came down once, hard and commanding. Exhibit J is entered. This court will consider all documentation as evidence of intentional financial hiding and misappropriation. Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown, your words will be balanced against this evidence. The courtroom atmosphere has changed. No longer was this a case of hearsay or conjecture. The story was recorded, supported, and indubitable. Janelle was no longer merely the ex-wife fighting for justice. She was the mastermind of the disclosure, dominating the room with a quiet presence. The drama in the courtroom had been cranked up to a fevered pitch. Each gesture, each breath was magnified under the intense gaze of the reporters, cameras, and audience. The atmosphere was electric, as if the very walls were expecting the next bombshell. Janelle's lawyer rose, voice calm, measured. Your Honor, we now present Exhibit K, an itemized report of LLC creations, property purchases, and financial misappropriations directly linked back to Mr. Cody Brown and Mrs. Robyn Brown, conducted without the knowledge or approval of Mrs. Sullivan. The judge thumbed through the document slowly, methodically. "Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown, are you agreeing that these records are correct?" Kody's fingers tapped impatiently on the tabletop. I might have participated in some transfers, but it wasn't done out of malice." "Not malice?" Janelle stopped him, serene and incisive. "You diverted monies, manipulated financial instruments, and redirected assets under false rhetoric. Your motives are immaterial when the actions are recorded and indisputable." Robyn's face went whiter still. She had taken years working carefully to shape the family's image, to keep up appearances. Now her masterfully engineered story was falling apart bit by bit. Christine leaned in to Mary, mumbling inaudibly. "It is happening just as we anticipated. But Janelle isn't just casting aspersions. She is destroying the whole house of cards." Mary's gaze was riveted on Janelle, a mixture of awe and gratitude. Decades of being marginalized, reduced, rubbed out, and she is claiming it all back. Then Janelle's lawyer gave the judge a flash drive. "Your Honor, Exhibit L video evidence, captured in 2020, of Mr. Brown and Mrs. Brown talking about diverting family and network monies into private accounts without approval from Mrs. Sullivan." The judge motioned for the technician to make the video play. Everyone in the room was quiet as Kody's voice filled the room, talking about ways to cover up financial transactions. Robyn's hands went to her mouth, eyes open with shock. Kody's stance hardened, shoulders slumped, jaw locked. The gallery murmured. Cameras snapped. Even veteran reporters immune to scandal were enthralled by the calculated neatness of the evidence. Janelle was calm, unruffled. Undefined, she didn't blink, didn't falter. Undefined, each detail had been reckoned with, every response calculated. At her back, Ben Sullivan's presence was a quiet reminder she wasn't alone, and she had the means to carry this through. "Your Honor," the lawyer went on, "the evidence indicates a concerted and intentional effort to keep Mrs. Sullivan out of her rightful inheritance, assets, and economic position. Undefined way requests that the court recognize this trend and act accordingly." The gavel came down. Sharply. Undefined Exhibit K and L are entered into the record. This court will delve into these documents in detail, and the necessary steps will be taken to correct any wrongdoing. Kody's shoulders hunched, a subdued admission of the first legal jab. Undefined Robyn's hands shook, mascara streaking down her face. Undefined for the first time, the Brown family's carefully crafted veneer of control had been breached in public. The courtroom was heavier, nearly oppressive, as the next stage of Janelle's plan unfolded. The Brown clan, once beyond reach in their cocooned world, now sat vulnerable to the blinding light of evidence and witnesses. The air vibrated with tension, each tense movement magnified by anticipation and dread. Janelle's lawyer, unruffled and authoritative, spoke to the court. "Your Honor, we now present as a witness an internal auditor, Mrs. Ellen Harper, who managed financial compliance for Brown Entertainment Holdings between 2015 and 2021. Her evidence will reveal the scale and intent of asset diversion from Mrs. Sullivan." The gallery buzzed. Ellen Harper's evidence had been awaited but not entirely disclosed until this moment. She walked to the stand, her expression serious yet her voice clear and strong. "Throughout my time, I witnessed repeated financial transactions which were misrepresented in reporting. Money intended for family projects was siphoned into private entities controlled by Mr. Cody Brown and Mrs. Robyn Brown." Robyn's lips parted in horror, her hands shaking faintly as she wrapped her fingers over the lip of the table. Kody's face had turned white, jaw clenched, shoulders rigid. For once, neither of them knew what to say. Christine leaned over to Mary and said, "She is validating it all. Every manipulation, every secret transfer. None of it was coincidental." Mary's eyes stayed on Janelle. "This is vindication more than anything," she said quietly. "It is evidence that the system was built to wipe her out, and now she is taking it apart, piece by piece." The judge leaned forward and read Ellen Harper's testimony in combination with the documents that had been filed. "These financial discrepancies are extensive and deliberate," he noted. "Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown, your explanation for these irregularities will be weighed carefully, but the evidence is significant." Janelle's attorney handed the judge another folder. "Your Honor, Exhibit M, corroborating evidence including emails, bank statements, and property transfers. The papers establish that money was routinely diverted for private gain instead of joint family enterprise, specifically excluding Mrs. Sullivan from participation. Kody's fingers tapped anxiously on the table. His initial confidence had utterly dissolved under the accuracy of paper and testimony. Robyn's mascara ran further down, her composure visibly failing. Ben Sullivan stood silently behind Janelle, a silent pillar, supporting her immovable stance. Each look from Kody in his direction conveyed apprehension. Each finely tuned movement emphasized the fact that Janelle's return was not just tactical, it was supported by power, evidence, and accuracy. The courtroom was no longer merely a platform for legal process. It had become a war zone of revelation, reality, and reclaiming. The Brown family's power, carefully built over the years, was systematically undermined in the moment. Their secrets laid bare and their control challenged in open defiance. The courtroom was electric with tension, each gaze focusing on the unfolding drama. The Brown family sat stiff, faces drained, hands tight, realizing that the past they believed well buried had emerged in cold definition. Janelle's lawyer moved forward, his voice measured. "Your Honor, now we offer Exhibit N, internal memos and transaction records exhibiting a pattern of financial deception intended to hide assets from Mrs. Sullivan. These acts were performed knowingly and with intent to deceive." The gallery gasped. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled frantically, documenting the enormity of the revelation. Even old journalists knew the seriousness of what was being testified to. Years of financial malfeasance revealed in black and white. "Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown," the lawyer went on. "Do you contest these transactions?" Kody's gaze darted nervously toward Robyn, hoping for backup, but was met with silence. These are technicalities," he spat, voice tight. "Technicalities?" Janelle's voice pierced the tension, measured and detached. The transactions siphoned tens of thousands of dollars over several years into accounts and properties that are off limits to me, systematically kept out of joint records. Technicalities do not expunge intentional misconduct. Robyn's hands trembled, mascara, smudged face showing fissures in her controlled veneer. For years, she had constructed a story of power, covering choices that hurt others while keeping up appearances. Now, reality was catching up. Janelle's lawyer presented the judge with a USB drive. "Your Honor, Exhibit O video recordings and taped conversations between Mr. Brown and Mrs. Brown regarding diverted funds and unapproved asset transfers. These are first-hand evidence of intent and coordination." The USB was plugged in by the technician. A silence covered the courtroom as Kody's and Robyn's voices echoed, talking about transfers, misdirection, and concealing strategies. The gallery gasped in amazement. Each word, each instruction was proof of the intentional exclusion of Mrs. Sullivan from what was rightfully hers. Christine and Mary looked at one another. "It is all written down," Christine whispered. "Each devious move, each orchestrating order. She is revealing it all." Mary's gaze never left Janelle. "She is not simply taking back what belongs to her," Mary softly stated. "She is demonstrating to everyone just how it was taken from her and why it had to stop." The judge's gavel came down hard. Exhibit N and O are entered into the record. The court recognizes the gravity of these discoveries and will take them into account in deciding on the proper restitution and penalty. The Brown family had started to disintegrate under the pressure of reality. Janelle's calm, deliberate demeanor had transformed the courtroom into a theater of discovery, stripping away years of delusion and revealing a pattern of manipulation and deception. The courtroom waited with bated breath, excitement flowing through every nook and cranny. Janelle was calm, a cool eye in the center of a tempest that she had plotted for months. The Brown household, previously off-limits, now sat open, their secrets exposed for everyone to peruse. Janelle's lawyer spoke to the judge, voice measured but resolute. "Your Honor, we now offer Exhibit P, a detailed ledger accounting for rerouted TLC stipends, trust funds, and cosigner account contributions. All entry recorded, all transfer tallied, and all point to willful withholding from Mrs. Sullivan." The room was silent. Even the court reporter stopped, pen suspended over the page. Kody's fists were clenched, knuckles white, jaw set hard. Robyn's eyes were a picture of shock and desperation. mascara smeared, fingers drumming rapidly against the table. Christine leaned in toward Mary, saying in a low voice, This is the culmination. Each diversion, each cover-up, it is all coming out." Mary stared at Janelle, awe and gratitude intertwining. "She is not taking back what was stolen," Mary whispered. "She is tearing down the system that attempted to destroy her." The judge leaned forward, scanning the documents. "Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown, the court acknowledges the severity of these revelations. The evidence suggests coordinated financial manipulation intended to deny Mrs. Sullivan her legal and financial rights." Janelle's attorney handed over another flash drive. "Your Honor, Exhibit Q video footage of discussions between Mr. Brown and Mrs. Brown regarding the diversion of funds and assets, corroborated by financial records and witness testimony. This is direct evidence of intent and coordination." The USB was plugged into the system. The courtroom quieted as Cody's and Robyn's voices echoed through the air. Speaking of redirecting resources, setting up shell companies and managing family money without Mrs. Sullivan's awareness. Each phrase was incriminating, each sentence a confirmation of intention. Kody stood quietly behind Janelle, his presence an unobtrusive reminder that she sat strategically backed, ready for any response. Cody's gaze quickly crossed his for a moment, a flicker of discomfort crossing his expression. The judge brought his gavel down sharply, in command. "Exhibit P and Q are entered into the record. The court will review the entire evidence in deciding proper restitution, property reassignment, and penalties for misconduct." For the first time, the Brown family's hierarchy visibly disintegrated. The illusion of control so skillfully sustained for decades had been deconstructed brick by brick. Janelle's deliberate, uncompromising strategy had not only taken back her place, it had turned the tables completely, leaving the family naked, their secrets openly accepted, and their power in question. The courtroom, which had been a site of strained propriety, was now a theater of disclosure, justice, and reclamation. The morning light poured through the high courtroom windows, casting long shadows across the highly polished wooden benches. The day had the heavy burden of years of secrets, and for the first time the Brown family could no longer cover their tracks behind facades. The judge cleared his throat and rearranged his papers. Having reviewed the extensive evidence, financial documents, video records, and witness statements, this court concludes that Mrs. Janelle Sullivan, Mrs. Christine Brown, and Mrs. Mary Brown were intentionally kept out of rightful holdings and financial interests by joint actions of Mr. Cody Brown and Mrs. Robyn Brown. A buzz passed through the gallery. Cody's shoulders sagged, jaw clenched, the facade of command broken. Robyn's hands shook in her lap, mascara smudged, eyes wide with shock. Thus, the judge went on, ownership of family property, including Coyote Pass, shall be redistributed equally between Mrs. Sullivan, Mrs. Christine Brown, and Mrs. Mary Brown. Mr. Brown's interest is held in abeyance pending further study of mismanaged funds. Mrs. Robyn Brown's allegations are retracted in light of evidence of abuse of resources and cover-ups. The courtroom fell silent, shocked by the official admission of what everyone had long suspected. Journalists wrote furiously. Shutters snapped, and the taint of responsibility lingered in the air. Janelle sat erect, quiet eyes straight ahead. For the first time, a gentle smile spread across her face, not pride, not vindication, but relief. She hadn't just walked away. She had reclaimed what was rightfully hers and restored justice to the family structure. Christine and Mary exchanged glances, hands clasping tightly in a shared, unspoken acknowledgement. "We finally have control," Christine whispered. "We've survived, and now we're restoring what was lost," the judge concluded. This court refers all documents to the Flagstaff Financial Crimes Unit for review. Formal charges may follow. The trial is over. The Brown family exited the courtroom in mournful silence. Kody resisted all eye contact. Robyn's public image had disintegrated completely, and for the first time, the controlling family reaped the harvest of their labor. Outside the courthouse stood Janelle with Ben Sullivan, Christine, and Mary. No cameras, no crews, no dramatic posturing, just silent vindication of regained control. The wind whipped by as they stepped forward together, lighter, unencumbered, free from the manipulations that had dominated their lives. Weeks later, word of the court's ruling passed around. Public pronouncements were few. Janelle, Christine, and Mary opted for action rather than spectacle. Janelle started a small women's financial coaching business. Christine went on working quietly, and Mary devoted time to personal recovery and planning for the future. Cody and Robyn were subject to investigations, legal examination, and the public exposure of years of mishandling. Their empire, once invincible, was shattered, leaving only a residue of power. Janelle's last photo, taken in the still moments, told more than of triumph. It revealed strength, clarity, and the abiding truth that at times survival means taking back one's own story with specificity, courage, and patience. The story of the Brown family was no longer a soap opera tale of strife. It was now one of justice, reclamation, and abiding strength. Janelle's new marriage had sent shockwaves through the family, but it also sparked a journey toward accountability, empowerment, and closure that no scandal or manipulation could erase.